One of the biggest things that changes in the late Republic, the Roman society overly militarizes in order to beat Carthage. You go from standing citizen army, more like our National Guard, to a very militarized society. And before that time period, it really mattered to people what they were doing for Rome. After that time period, it matters to them what are they doing for their commander.
Do you have a particular thought as to what the primary driver for the collapse was, or is it too hard to tease apart all the different factors?
There's so many different factors you could go into, and every Roman historian would tell me I'm wrong, right? Because a lot of ancient history is interesting, right? Like modern history, we know what happened, we know exactly what occurred. Ancient history is a lot of opinion, right? Because there are only so many surviving sources. We have to piece a lot of things together. But if you want to look at it, one of the biggest things that changes in the late Republic, Rome in the 3rd and 2nd century BC, so we're looking at like the 200s and 300s, goes through the Punic Wars. So the Roman society overly militarizes in order to beat Carthage. And one of the things that's going to change in that time period is you go from a standing citizen army, more like our National Guard, to a very militarized society. And that's going to be accentuated in the 1st century BC when a gentleman named Gaius Marius changes the military dramatically and makes it a standing army. So what ends up happening is before that time period, it really mattered to people what they were doing for Rome. After that time period, it matters to them what are they doing for their commander. So that's going to be something that changes how the military functions. It's going to change a lot of daily life. And that will be one of the major threads later on that will start to bring its demise. Because if you look at how inflation happens, it happens much differently than how we see it, right? For us, it's ones and zeros in a computer. For Romans, it would have been a real physical thing, right? Because they would have these, I actually have some next to me too. Like, I don't know if you can see this here. That's a Roman coin. I don't know if it's
Mm-hmm.
So they would have these physical coins. That's a Roman bronze coin from the 3rd century. But the way that inflation would work is they would actually take off pieces of their coins and replace them with less valuable metals. So you have a coin that in the time of Augustus in the 1st century AD that would have been 95% pure silver. By the time of Aurelian in the 270s, it's 5% silver. So it's a real physical thing that people realized their money was losing value. And the thing that drives that, honestly, is military pay. Because since a commander could now become emperor by the power of his military, well, you have to pay them better, right? So you have in 193, the emperor that comes up at that time actually doubles the pay of the military. And you're going to have that process continue. As well as if you look at how the Roman Empire functioned, it had a very big welfare component to it. And this starts during the time of the Gracchi brothers, but will become a lot more standard during the time of Julius Caesar. Every person in Rome was promised a certain amount of grain. So you have military driving inflation. You also have this grain driving inflation. And one of the things that allows Rome to expand like it is they had this perfect climate period. It was called the Roman climate optimum. It goes from about 200 BC to around 200 AD. And in the later empire, most of the grain is going to come from the east, and it's going to come from Egypt and areas like that. But what ends up happening is as the climate changes, what would happen is the Nile would flood every year, and that flood water would make the Nile Delta very fertile and a great place for growing grain. But you're going to have around 250 AD, the Nile doesn't flood that year. And it's going to stop flooding as consistently as it did. So now there's less grain. So grain prices double, triple, quadruple, and you have to feed all these people and the prices are skyrocketing. So it's a really interesting kind of way to look at things, that military power really drives it, but also the fact that they have this promise to feed everyone is a really major part of it as well.
So massive overhead increases and
Yeah.
Inflation, obviously, and governmental subsidies, basically
Yes.
primary drivers to the collapse.
Yes.
Another good argument for not eating grains, right? Just go keto and avoid the grain.
You could do that too. It's funny too. Have you ever heard of the word decimation?
Yeah.
So the word decimation, it comes from the Latin decem, meaning 10. And when the military didn't win a battle or didn't obey their commander, what would happen is the commander would pull out every 10th man and basically kill them in front of the group. And then he would then force the rest of the army to eat barley. And the reason he would do that is because barley would give them more gas than the grains they were eating. So they would have 10% less men and they all be farting up a storm, I guess.
I guess. So interestingly enough, I mean, I'm not particularly getting political on the podcast, but
Sure.
I would be curious with the current trajectory of the U.S. as it's been. I feel like there's just been so much volatility in the
Yeah.
U.S. as of the last 10 years, really. But when you look at what kind of trajectory we're on now, and you contrast that with what you know about the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, like, do you feel like we are now starting to move in the right direction, or do you feel like we are trending downward?
So here's my concern, right? My concern is if you look at it, economics drives everything.
Mhm.
And what is our national debt now? Is it like $34 trillion or something like that? It's some
It's far.
obnoxious number.
Yeah.
So the thing you have to consider is our money is losing value every single day, right? You can go do the same car repairs now that you did 10 years ago, and the price is going to be, if not a third more, it's going to be almost double. And it's not because those repairs cost more, but it's because your dollar is worth less every single day. So to me, if we don't solve monetary problems, we're not in good shape, right? Because the thing you have to consider is for Romans, as I mentioned, inflation was a very physical thing, right? It was a coin that was being broken down into smaller pieces and different types of metals. For us, it's done in a computer, right? You know, if you look at what's done here, they call it quantitative easing, and that's a fancy word for meaning they printed more money. And if you want to look at the money supply, it's tracked in different printings. And the most recent printing um, was started around 2020, and about 80% of all dollars in circulation were currently created after 2020. So that's the thing I would really be concerned about is what's happening monetarily. And honestly, that doesn't seem like it's getting better, right? It doesn't seem like it's improving. Sure, gas prices have went down a little bit, but at the same time, I run a business, you run a business. My prices have had to more than double from 4 years ago. My costs have skyrocketed, and those things aren't that much more expensive. It's just the fact that our money doesn't go as far. So unless we figure out a way to reform that, I would be pretty concerned about where we're headed, honestly.
Do you put much hope at all in the fiat currency, or are you kind of like all in on Bitcoin?
So I don't know. I guess I'm too much of a conspiracy guy, Robert, on the whole Bitcoin side of things. It really kind of wigs me out that nobody actually knows who created it. It's just written in this white paper, and it could be the CIA, it could be the IMF. Like, we don't know who actually made this thing, so that does worry me. I'm somebody that I like physical assets a bit more,
Yeah.
so we tend to put our money in gold and silver because those are things that have held their power for thousands of years, and they will for thousands of years more. And if you look at what the Eastern Roman Empire did to solve their currency problem, you're going to have a guy that's going to become emperor in 312. His name's Constantine, and he often becomes famous for being the first Christian to become emperor. Well, he becomes Christian after he becomes emperor, but being the first Christian emperor. It's not going to be a Christian empire until 380 under Emperor Theodosius. But the thing that Constantine does, which he doesn't get a lot of historical credit for, is he moves Rome slowly to a gold standard. In 314, in a city called Trier in Germany, he's going to mint a few hundred gold coins. And since the empire is also changing religiously, they were taking possession of a lot of gold in pagan temples, and that gold was being melted down and made into new coins. So every year until he dies in 336, he's going to create gold coins. So by the time he dies, the Eastern Empire or the Byzantine Empire is on a gold standard. That is going to go for almost 700 years without inflation, and it's going to hit pretty hard after the Great Schism in 1054. But it made a very solid currency, right? So I think there are definitely some ways we could do something about it, but at the same time, we're very far over our skis.
What year was it that we pretty much threw out the gold standard that we were tracking on Fort Knox?
So I
What
think
year
it
was
was at 1970 under Nixon. I think was
that?
when that
Sounds right.
happened. You
Yeah.
had in the 1930s. FDR was actually repossessing a lot of the gold, and they were trying to make it so people couldn't actually hold gold. But I believe the gold standard change was under Nixon. I think in 1970.
It's pretty much been downhill since then, right?
Yeah, but if you look at the price of gold now, it's over $3,000 an ounce.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it makes me want to be a prospector again, man. Just get my tin pan and head out into the mountains somewhere.
Yeah, it might give you some more stability, and I think that is the real thing you have to worry about, though, is if currency is based on nothing, like our fiat dollar is. It's why we put so much attention on the Middle East, because if anything happens with oil, then our dollar is ruined, right? Because it's totally the price of oil is based on it.
Yeah, it is weird, man. It's like everybody's got a different take on this. I mean, I don't trust the powers that be any
Oh, nor
further
do
than
I.
throw them. But at the same time, it's like the way we're operating now, like they don't win if it all falls apart either, you know? So
Correct.
like, nobody wins. We all lose if everything goes into a collapse. So I don't know, man. It's scary times. Like I'm glad I'm self-sufficient. Like
Yeah.
I'm glad I got food in the freezer, so to speak, you know?
Well, you don't have to worry about those grains either, so you're saving some costs there.
That's true. That's true. Thank you for watching this episode of The Savage Clip. If you want to see the full blown deep dive, check out the full episode here, and I'll see you there.